The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Children's Hospital cast harsh shadows across the sterile corridors as Dr. Michael Harrison finished his evening rounds. 20 years of pediatric surgery had taught him to compartmentalize emotion, to focus on the medical facts rather than the heartbreak that often filled these halls. But tonight, something felt different. As he walked past the long-term care unit, he noticed two small figures huddled together on a bench outside room 314, their identical faces illuminated by the pale glow of the vending machines. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The twin girls couldn't have been more than 10 years old. Their dark hair pulled back in matching ponytails, wearing clothes that had seen better days. They sat in perfect synchronization, their small hands clasped together, staring through the window of the hospital room with an intensity that made Michael's chest tighten. Inside the room, barely visible through the partially closed blinds, lay a woman connected to various machines, her breathing assisted by a ventilator. Something about the scene stopped Michael in his tracks. In all his years at the hospital, he had witnessed countless family vigils, but there was something haunting about these two children keeping watch alone. Where were the other family members? Why were they sitting in the hallway instead of beside their mother's bed? The questions multiplied in his mind as he approached them slowly, his footsteps muffled by the hospital carpeting. The first thing Michael noticed was how the twins seemed to sense his presence before he even spoke. They turned their heads in unison, revealing faces that were mirror images of each other, yet somehow distinctly different in expression. The girl on the left had eyes that seemed older than her years, filled with a protective wariness that spoke of too much responsibility for someone so young. The girl on the right possessed a gentler demeanor, her gaze holding a mixture of hope and fear that made Michael's heart ache. "Hello there," Michael said softly, crouching down to their eye level. "I'm Dr. Harrison. I work here at the hospital. Are you two waiting for someone?" The twins exchanged a glance that seemed to communicate volumes without words. It was the protective one who spoke first, her voice steady despite her obvious exhaustion. "We're waiting for our mom to wake up. The nurses said we could sit here for a little while longer." Michael glanced at his watch. It was nearly 9 in the evening, well past visiting hours for children. "What are your names?" "I'm Emma," the protective twin replied, then gestured to her sister. "This is Ella. We're here with our mom, Lisa Chen. She's been sleeping for 3 days now." The name struck Michael like a physical blow. Lisa Chen. He knew that name, though he hadn't heard it spoken aloud in over a decade. Memories flooded back with startling clarity, memories of medical school, late-night study sessions, dreams shared over coffee in the hospital cafeteria, and a love that had seemed destined to last forever until ambition and circumstance tore them apart. Struggling to maintain his composure, Michael stood slowly. "Would you mind if I checked on your mother? I'm one of the doctors here." Emma's eyes narrowed slightly, the protective instinct that seemed ingrained in her nature coming to the forefront. "The other doctors said she has something called sepsis. They're trying different medicines, but nothing's working yet." Michael nodded, understanding flooding through him. Sepsis was serious, often life-threatening, especially if it had progressed to the point where Lisa was on a ventilator. "I'd like to take a look at her medical chart, if that's okay with you two. Sometimes a fresh pair of eyes can help." Ella spoke for the first time, her voice softer than her sister's but carrying equal weight. "Are you going to help her get better?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with hope and desperation. Michael looked at these two beautiful children who bore such a striking resemblance to the woman he had once loved, and felt something shift inside his chest. "I'm going to do everything I can," he promised, though he knew better than to make guarantees he might not be able to keep. As Michael entered room 314, the steady beeping of monitors and the rhythmic whoosh of the ventilator created a symphony of artificial life support. Lisa lay still in the hospital bed, her face pale, but still recognizably the woman who had captured his heart during their residency years. Time had changed her, as it had changed him, but the essence of her remained the same. Her dark hair, now longer than he remembered, was spread across the pillow, and even unconscious, she maintained the serene expression that had always been uniquely hers. Michael approached her bedside and picked up the chart, his trained eyes scanning the medical notes with growing concern. Lisa had been admitted 4 days ago with what initially appeared to be a routine infection, but her condition had deteriorated rapidly. The attending physician had tried multiple antibiotic combinations, but the infection was proving resistant to treatment. Her vital signs were unstable, and the longer she remained in this state, the lower her chances of recovery became. Setting the chart aside, Michael found himself studying Lisa's face, searching for signs of the vibrant, passionate woman he had known. She had been brilliant in medical school, destined for greatness in emergency medicine, with a fierce dedication to helping others that had inspired everyone around her. They had planned their futures together, mapping out residencies and fellowships, dreaming of opening a clinic that would serve underserved communities. But when Michael received an opportunity for a prestigious surgical fellowship across the country, their relationship couldn't survive the distance and the competing demands of their careers. He had tried to convince her to come with him, to give up her own fellowship opportunity, but Lisa had been unwilling to sacrifice her dreams for his. In retrospect, he understood her decision, even admired it, but at the time, their parting had been bitter and final. They had both been too young and too proud to find a compromise, too focused on their individual paths to see that they could have walked them together. Now, over a decade later, seeing her fighting for her life, while her daughters waited anxiously in the hallway, Michael felt the weight of all those lost years. He wondered about the path that had led her here, about the father of those remarkable twins, about the life she had built without him. The girls had said they were here alone with their mother, which suggested there wasn't a husband or partner in the picture. The thought both saddened and intrigued him. Returning to the hallway, Michael found Emma and Ella exactly where he had left them, their vigil continuing with unwavering determination. They looked up at him expectantly, their identical faces reflecting the same mixture of hope and fear he had seen earlier. "Your mother is very sick," Michael said gently, choosing his words carefully. "But I've seen patients recover from similar conditions. The medical team here is doing everything they can to help her fight this infection." Emma nodded solemnly, accepting his words with the gravity of someone far older than her 10 years. "The nurses have been really nice to us. They brought us sandwiches earlier and let us use the phone to call our babysitter." "Your babysitter?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story, Michael asked, sensing there was more to the story. "Mrs. Rodriguez from our apartment building," Ella explained. "She's been taking care of us since Mom got sick, but she has to work during the day, so we come here after school." The picture was becoming clearer. Lisa was a single mother, raising twins on her own, and when she became ill, there wasn't a support system of family or a partner to help care for the girls. The realization made Michael's chest tighten with a mixture of admiration and concern. Lisa had always been fiercely independent, but the thought of her struggling alone to raise children while building her career touched something deep inside him. "Do you have any other family nearby?" Michael asked. "Grandparents, aunts, uncles?" Emma shook her head. Mum's parents died when we were babies. Her sister lives in California, but they don't talk much anymore. It's mostly just been the three of us." The simple statement carried enormous weight. These two 10-year-old girls and their unconscious mother were essentially alone in the world, facing a crisis that would challenge even the strongest family unit. Michael found himself thinking about his own life, about the successful surgical practice he had built, the comfortable existence he had created, and the emptiness that had been growing inside him despite all his professional achievements. "Have you eaten dinner tonight?" he asked, suddenly aware that the twins looked thin and tired. Ella nodded. "Mrs. Rodriguez left us money for the cafeteria. We had chicken nuggets and apple juice." That's good," Michael said, though he suspected one meal from the hospital cafeteria wasn't enough nutrition for growing children who were under enormous stress. "Listen, I'm going to make sure the medical team knows I'm taking a special interest in your mother's case. I want to review all her treatment options and see if there's anything else we can try." Emma studied his face intently, her mature eyes seeming to look right through him. "Why do you want to help us? You don't even know us." The question was direct and deserved an honest answer, though Michael wasn't sure how much of the truth. He was ready to share. "I knew your mother a long time ago, before you were born. We were friends in medical school." Both twins perked up at this information, their interest clearly piqued. "You knew our mom when she was young?" Ella asked, wonder creeping into her voice. "I did," Michael confirmed. "She was one of the smartest, most dedicated people I ever met. She wanted to be a doctor so she could help people, especially children who didn't have access to good medical care." "She is a doctor," Emma said with obvious pride. "She works in the emergency room at Metro General. All the nurses there call her Dr. Chen, and she helps people who are hurt or sick." Michael smiled at the pride in Emma's voice. So Lisa had achieved her dream of working in emergency medicine. He wondered if she had ever opened that clinic they had talked about, if she had found a way to serve the underserved communities that had been so important to her. "She sounds like an amazing doctor and an amazing mother," Michael said sincerely. "She is," Ella said softly. "She reads to us every night before bed, even when she's really tired from work. And she makes the best pancakes on Sunday mornings. She taught us how to ride bikes in the park and how to swim at the community center." The picture of Lisa as a mother was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Michael could easily imagine her exhausted after long shifts in the emergency room, but still finding the energy to be present for her daughters, to create those precious childhood memories that would last a lifetime. It spoke to the same dedication and compassion that had drawn him to her all those years ago. "Dr. Harrison," Emma's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Can we ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think our mom is going to die?" The question hung in the air between them, stark and terrifying in its simplicity. Michael looked at these two brave little girls who were facing the possibility of losing the only parent they had ever known, and felt his heart break for them. He wanted to reassure them, to promise them that everything would be okay, but his medical training wouldn't allow him to give false hope. "I think your mother is a fighter," he said carefully, "and I think she has two very important reasons to fight hard, to get better." Emma and Ella exchanged another one of their silent communications, and Michael could see them drawing strength from each other in the way that only twins seemed able to do. They had clearly developed a deep bond, not just as siblings, but as partners in navigating their young lives. "We should probably head home soon," Emma said, glancing at the clock on the wall. "Mrs. Rodriguez said she'd pick us up at 9:30. Michael nodded, understanding that these children had a routine they needed to maintain, school tomorrow, and responsibilities that seemed far too heavy for their young shoulders. "Before you go, could I ask you something?" Both girls nodded, expectantly, What are your favorite subjects in school? I like math and science, Emma replied without hesitation. I want to be a doctor like Mom someday. I like art and English, Ella added. I want to write stories for children. Michael smiled at their different but equally ambitious dreams. Those are wonderful goals. Your mother must be very proud of you. She always says we can be anything we want to be, Emma said. She says that's why she works so hard, so we can have choices when we grow up. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a middle-aged Hispanic woman wearing a hospital cleaning uniform. She approached the twins with obvious affection and concern. "Mijas, how are you holding up?" she asked, pulling both girls into a gentle hug. "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is Dr. Harrison," Emma said, introducing Michael. "He knew our mom when she was in medical school." Mrs. Rodriguez extended her hand to Michael with a tired but genuine smile. "Maria Rodriguez. I live in the same apartment building as Lisa and the girls. I've been helping out since she got sick." Michael shook her hand, grateful that these children had at least one caring adult in their lives during this crisis. "It's very kind of you to help them." "Lisa is like a daughter to me," Maria replied. "And these two are special girls. They're being so brave, but I know they're scared." As Michael watched Maria gather the twins' belongings and prepare to take them home, he found himself reluctant to see them go. Something about Emma and Ella had touched him deeply, beyond just his connection to their mother. Perhaps it was their courage in the face of uncertainty, or the way they supported each other, or simply the fact that they were Lisa's children. Whatever it was, he knew he couldn't just walk away. "Emma, Ella," he called as they prepared to leave. Both girls turned back to him. "I'll be checking on your mother throughout the night, and I'll be here tomorrow when you come after school. If anything changes, good or bad, I'll make sure someone calls Mrs. Rodriguez right away." The relief that crossed both their faces was evident. "Thank you, Dr. Harrison," Ella said softly. "Yeah, thanks," Emma added, her protective facade softening slightly. "It makes us feel better knowing someone who cares about Mom is watching over her." As Michael watched them walk down the hospital corridor with Maria, he felt a shift in his priorities that he hadn't expected. For years, his life had been defined by surgical schedules, medical conferences, and professional achievements. He had built a successful practice, earned the respect of his peers, and accumulated wealth and recognition. But standing in that hospital hallway, thinking about Lisa fighting for her life and her two remarkable daughters facing an uncertain future, none of his accomplishments seemed to matter. Returning to Lisa's room, Michael spent the next several hours reviewing her case file, consulting with specialists and researching treatment options that might have been overlooked. The sepsis was severe, but not hopeless. There were experimental treatments available, newer antibiotics that might prove more effective, and surgical interventions that could potentially save her life. The key was acting quickly and aggressively before her condition deteriorated further. As dawn broke over the city, Michael had compiled a comprehensive treatment plan that he was confident offered Lisa her best chance of recovery. But more than that, he had made a decision that would change the course of his life. Whatever happened with Lisa's treatment, he wasn't going to disappear from her daughters' lives again. Emma and Ella needed support, stability, and someone who could help them navigate this crisis and whatever came after. The thought of being involved in their lives both thrilled and terrified him. He had never been a father, had never even seriously considered the possibility. His relationship with Lisa had ended before they could explore that future together, and in the years since, he had convinced himself that his career was enough, that he didn't need the complications that came with family life. But now, faced with the possibility of stepping into the lives of these two extraordinary children, he realized how empty his existence had become. Michael made his way to the on-call room to grab a few hours of sleep before his morning surgeries, but rest eluded him. His mind raced with thoughts of Lisa, of Emma and Ella, of the choices he had made and the chances he had missed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, difficult conversations, and decisions that would affect not just his life, but the lives of 3 people who had unexpectedly become the most important thing in his world. The morning shift change brought fresh energy to the hospital corridors, but in room 314, Lisa's condition remained unchanged. Michael arrived early before his scheduled surgeries to check on her and to implement the aggressive treatment plan he had developed during the night. The infectious disease specialist he had consulted agreed to try a combination of newer antibiotics, and the surgical team was on standby if an operation became necessary to remove infected tissue. As Michael adjusted Lisa's IV medications and monitored her vital signs, he found himself talking to her, hoping that somewhere in her unconscious state she could hear him. He told her about meeting Emma and Ella, about how remarkable and brave they were, about how proud she should be of the daughters she had raised. He spoke about their shared past, about the dreams they had once pursued together, and about his regret that their paths had diverged so completely. "They need you, Lisa," he whispered, adjusting her blanket. "Those girls need their mother, but if something happens, if you can't fight this, I want you to know that they won't be alone. I'll make sure they're taken care of, that they have every opportunity to achieve their dreams just like you wanted." The promise felt both natural and overwhelming. Michael was essentially committing to become a father figure to children he had known for less than 24 hours. Children who had no idea of his connection to their mother or his growing attachment to them. But as he looked at Lisa's peaceful face and thought about Emma's protective determination and Ella's gentle hope, he knew he couldn't make any other choice. The morning passed quickly with surgeries and consultations, but Michael found his thoughts returning constantly to room 314. During his lunch break, he made his way back to check on Lisa's progress. The new antibiotic combination seemed to be having some effect. Her temperature had dropped slightly, and her white blood cell count showed marginal improvement. It was too early to declare victory, but the signs were cautiously encouraging. As the afternoon approached, Michael found himself anticipating the arrival of Emma and Ella. He had been thinking about them all day, wondering how they had slept, whether they had been able to concentrate in school, if they were holding up under the enormous pressure they were facing. When he saw them emerge from the elevator at precisely 3:15, their school backpacks slung over their shoulders and their faces set with determined hope, he felt a surge of emotion that surprised him with its intensity. "Dr. Harrison," Ella called out, her face brightening when she spotted him in the hallway. Both twins hurried toward him, their earlier wariness replaced by something that looked almost like trust. "How is she today?" Emma asked immediately, her practical nature driving straight to the most important question. "Better," Michael said, and watched both girls' faces transform with relief. "Her fever is down, and the new medications seem to be helping fight the infection. We're not out of the woods yet, but I'm cautiously optimistic." Emma nodded seriously, processing the information with the gravity of someone much older. "Can we see her?" "Of course. In fact, I think it would be good for her to hear your voices. Sometimes patients who are unconscious can still hear what's happening around them." As they entered Lisa's room together, Michael watched the twins approach their mother's bedside with a mixture of hope and heartbreak. They had clearly been through this routine before, settling into chairs on either side of the bed and taking their mother's hands in their small ones. "Hi, Mom," Ella said softly. "We're back. Dr. Harrison says you're getting better today." "Emma got an A on her math test," Emma added, then corrected herself with a small smile. I got an A on my math test. And Ella's art teacher said her drawing of the park was the best in the class." Michael stood back, giving them space for their reunion while marveling at their resilience. These children were facing every parent's worst nightmare, yet they found ways to stay strong, to maintain hope, to continue living their lives even as their world hung in the balance. "Dr. Harrison," Ella's voice drew his attention. "Would you like to sit with us? You can tell Mom about when you knew her in medical school." The invitation was simple but profound. These children were including him in their most intimate family moment, trusting him with their mother's care and their own emotional well-being. Michael pulled up a chair and began to share stories of their mother's brilliance, her compassion, her determination to make a difference in the world. He told them about study groups that lasted until dawn, about the time Lisa had stayed up all night helping a classmate understand complex medical concepts, about her dream of opening a clinic that would serve children who couldn't afford proper medical care. As he spoke, Michael noticed subtle changes in Lisa's vital signs. Her heart rate seemed to stabilize, her breathing became slightly less labored, and there was color returning to her cheeks. Whether it was the new medications or the sound of familiar voices, something was helping her fight back against the infection that had nearly claimed her life. The afternoon visit stretched into evening as Emma and Ella settled into their homework routine, spreading books and papers across the chairs and floor of the hospital room. Michael found himself helping Emma with a complex math problem, while Ella worked on a creative writing assignment about heroes in everyday life. "Who are you writing about?" Michael asked, glancing at Ella's paper. "My mom," Ella replied without hesitation. "She saves people every day at her job, but she also saves me and Emma every day just by being our mom." The simple statement hit Michael with unexpected force. Here was a 10-year-old girl facing the possible loss of her mother, yet still seeing her as a hero rather than a victim. It spoke to the strength of the relationship Lisa had built with her daughters and the security she had provided despite being a single parent. As visiting hours came to an end, Michael found himself reluctant to see the twins leave. Over the course of just 2 days, they had become an integral part of his daily routine, a source of hope and purpose that had been missing from his life for longer than he cared to admit. "Dr. Harrison?" Emma's voice was hesitant as they prepared to leave. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you have kids of your own?" The question was innocent, but loaded with implications. Michael looked at these two remarkable children and realized that his answer would be more complicated than they could understand. "No," he said honestly. "I never married or had children. I've spent most of my time focused on my career." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Do you ever get lonely?" The directness of her question caught him off guard. Children had a way of cutting through adult pretenses and asking the questions that mattered most. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but meeting you and Ella has reminded me what I've been missing." Ella looked up from packing her backpack. "Maybe when Mom gets better, we could all have dinner together sometime. She likes cooking for people, and she makes really good spaghetti." The invitation was offered with such casual hopefulness that Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion. These children, who had every reason to be guarded and suspicious, were opening their hearts to him with a generosity that humbled him. "I would like that very much," he said sincerely. As Maria arrived to collect the twins, Michael watched them say goodnight to their unconscious mother with the same loving routine they had probably performed for days. They kissed her forehead, whispered words of encouragement, and promised to return the next day. Their faith in her recovery was absolute, and Michael found himself drawing strength from their certainty. That night, as Michael sat in his empty apartment overlooking the city, he reflected on how drastically his life had changed in just 48 hours. 2 days ago, he had been a successful surgeon with a comfortable but solitary existence. Now he found himself emotionally invested in the recovery of a woman he hadn't seen in over a decade, and protective of two children who weren't his, but felt like they should be. The next morning brought the breakthrough they had all been hoping for. When Michael arrived at the hospital, the night nurse reported that Lisa's vital signs had improved dramatically during the early morning hours. Her fever had broken, her white blood cell count was dropping, and most importantly, she had begun to show signs of emerging from her unconscious state. Michael rushed to room 314 to find Lisa's eyes open for the first time in days. She looked confused and disoriented, but alert and aware of her surroundings. When she saw him standing in the doorway, her expression shifted from confusion to recognition, to something that might have been joy. "Michael!" Her voice was hoarse from the ventilator, but unmistakably her own. "Hello, Lisa," he said softly, approaching her bedside. "Welcome back." As they looked at each other across the years and the distance that had separated them, Michael realized that this was just the beginning of a story that would change all their lives in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Lisa's recovery progressed faster than anyone had anticipated. Within 3 days of regaining consciousness, she was breathing on her own and sitting up in bed, though she remained weak and needed time to fully process everything that had happened during her illness. Michael found himself visiting her room multiple times each day, ostensibly to monitor her medical progress, but increasingly drawn by their conversations that stretched long into the evening hours. "The girls told me you've been here every day since they met you," Lisa said during one of their talks, her voice growing stronger with each passing hour. "They've become quite attached to you, Michael. Emma especially seems to trust you, and that's not something that comes easily to her." Michael adjusted his position in the bedside chair, considering his words carefully. "They're remarkable children, Lisa. The way they've handled this crisis, the maturity they've shown, the love they have for you, it's extraordinary." "They've had to grow up faster than I would have liked," Lisa admitted, a shadow of sadness crossing her features. "Being a single mother in a demanding profession isn't easy. Sometimes I worry that I've asked too much of them, that they've missed out on being carefree children because they've had to be my partners in making our little family work. From what I've seen, they wouldn't trade their relationship with you for anything," Michael said earnestly. "The way they talk about you, the pride in their voices when they describe your work, the absolute faith they had in your recovery, that's not the response of children who feel burdened. That's the response of children who know they're deeply loved." Lisa's eyes filled with tears, though whether from emotion or lingering weakness, Michael couldn't tell. "There were so many moments when I thought about calling you over the years. When the girls were born, when I graduated from residency, when I got my first job at Metro General, but I always talked myself out of it. I convinced myself that you had moved on, that you wouldn't want to be reminded of what we had." "I never moved on," Michael said quietly. "I built a successful career, but I never stopped wondering what happened to you, what kind of doctor you became, whether you were happy. If I had known about Emma and Ella." "What would you have done?" Lisa asked, her gaze direct and challenging, in the way he remembered from their medical school debates. Michael paused, recognizing the weight of the question. "I honestly don't know. I'd like to think I would have found a way to be part of their lives, to support you in raising them. But I was so focused on my career back then, so convinced that success meant sacrifice, I might have made the wrong choices." "We both made choices," Lisa said softly. "I chose not to tell you about the pregnancy because I saw how important that fellowship was to you. I thought I was being noble, freeing you to pursue your dreams without complications. Looking back, I realize I was also protecting myself from the possibility of rejection." The conversation hung between them, heavy with years of unspoken regrets and missed opportunities. Michael reached for Lisa's hand, finding it warm and responsive to his touch. "We can't change the past," he said, "but we're here now, and your daughters are incredible human beings who deserve to know that they have more family than they realized." Lisa studied his face intently. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Before Michael could respond, the sound of familiar voices in the hallway announced the arrival of Emma and Ella. They burst into the room with the energy of children who had been containing their excitement all day, their school backpacks hitting the floor as they rushed to their mother's bedside. "Mom, you look so much better today," Ella exclaimed, carefully climbing onto the bed to give Lisa a gentle hug. "Dr. Martinez said you might be able to come home next week," Emma added, her practical nature evident as she assessed her mother's condition with eyes that seemed far too experienced for a 10-year-old. "That's wonderful news," Lisa said, holding both girls close. "I've missed being home with you two more than you can imagine." Michael watched the reunion with a mixture of joy and trepidation. The girls were ecstatic about their mother's recovery, but he knew that Lisa's discharge would change the dynamic they had all established over the past week. The daily hospital visits, the routine they had developed, the growing bond between him and the twins, all of that would need to be redefined once Lisa returned to her normal life. "Dr. Harrison, are you going to keep visiting us after Mom comes home?" Ella asked with the directness that seemed to run in the family. The question caught Michael off guard, though he realized he should have anticipated it. The twins had become accustomed to his presence, to the stability he provided during their mother's crisis. Now they were facing another transition, another potential loss of someone who had become important to them. "I'd like to continue being part of your lives if that's what you want, and if your mother is comfortable with it," Michael said, glancing at Lisa for guidance. Lisa's expression was thoughtful as she considered his words. "Girls, Dr. Harrison and I knew each other a long time ago, before you were born. We were very close friends in medical school." Emma's analytical mind immediately seized on the implications. "How close?" she asked with characteristic bluntness. "We cared about each other very much," Lisa said carefully, "but our careers took us in different directions." "Were you boyfriend and girlfriend?" Ella asked, her romantic nature evident in the way her eyes lit up at the possibility. Lisa looked at Michael, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Yes, we were." The twins digested this information with the seriousness they brought to all important matters. Michael could almost see the wheels turning in their minds as they processed this new understanding of the relationship between their mother and the doctor, who had been such a constant presence during their crisis. "So, you loved our mum," Emma stated matter-of-factly. "I did," Michael confirmed, feeling the truth of those words resonate in his chest. "Do you still love her?" Ella asked with the innocent directness that only children possessed. Michael felt his heart race as he considered his answer. The past week had shown him not only how much he still cared for Lisa, but how naturally he had stepped into the role of protector and supporter for her children. The feelings he thought he had buried years ago had returned with startling intensity, complicated now by his growing attachment to Emma and Ella. "I care very much about your mother and about both of you," he said honestly. "This week has reminded me of how special your family is." The twins exchanged one of their silent communications, and Michael could see them reaching some kind of conclusion. It was Emma who spoke for both of them. "We like you being around," she said simply. "You make Mom smile in a way she doesn't usually smile. And you help us with our homework, and you explain medical stuff so we can understand what's happening. Plus, you brought us those really good cookies from the cafeteria," Ella added pragmatically. Lisa laughed, the sound filling the room with warmth that had been absent for too long. "Well, those are certainly compelling arguments." Over the following days, as Lisa's strength continued to improve and her discharge date approached, the four of them fell into a comfortable routine. Michael would stop by after his morning surgeries to check on Lisa's progress and help the twins with any homework questions that had stumped them the night before. During lunch breaks, he would return to find Lisa sitting up in the chair by the window, looking more like the vibrant woman he remembered from their medical school days. Their conversations during these visits ranged from reminiscences about their shared past to discussions about their current careers and hopes for the future. Michael learned that Lisa had indeed opened a small clinic in an underserved neighborhood, working there on weekends, in addition to her hospital shifts. The clinic was struggling financially, constantly short of supplies and funding, but Lisa's passion for the work was evident in every word she spoke about it. "It's exactly what we used to talk about doing together," she told him one afternoon while the twins were at their art therapy session down the hall. "A place where children can get quality medical care regardless of their family's ability to pay. Some weeks, I see more patients at the clinic than I do in the emergency room." "That's incredible," Michael said, genuinely impressed by her dedication. "How do you manage the financial challenges?" "Very carefully," Lisa said with a rueful smile. "I apply for grants, hold fundraisers, and basically use most of my hospital salary to keep the doors open. It's not sustainable long-term, but I can't bear the thought of closing it when there are so many children who need what we provide." Michael found himself thinking about Lisa's clinic constantly over the next few days. His own financial situation was comfortable. More than comfortable, actually. Years of successful surgical practice had left him wealthy enough to make a significant difference in the kind of work Lisa was doing. The idea of contributing to her clinic, of helping her achieve the dreams they had once shared, appealed to him on multiple levels. When he broached the subject with Lisa, however, her response was immediate and firm. "Absolutely not," she said, her voice carrying the same determined tone he remembered from their student days when she had refused to let him pay for dinner or movie tickets. "I appreciate the offer, Michael. I really do. But I need to know that what I've built can survive on its own merits. But if the clinic closes because of funding issues, the children you serve lose access to care," Michael pointed out. "Isn't their need more important than your pride?" "It's not about pride," Lisa said, though Michael suspected it was at least partially about that. "It's about sustainability and independence. If I accept a large donation from you, what happens when you decide you don't want to be involved anymore? What happens if our personal relationship changes and affects your willingness to support the clinic?" Michael understood her concerns, but he also saw the practical reality of her situation. What if there was a way to provide support that didn't compromise your independence? A partnership rather than charity? Lisa looked intrigued, despite her reservations. "What kind of partnership?" "I've been thinking about expanding my practice to include more pro bono work," Michael said, the idea crystallizing as he spoke. "What if I volunteered at your clinic one day a week? Surgical consultations, complex cases that need specialist attention. My involvement could help you apply for larger grants, attract other specialists, build the kind of comprehensive program you've always envisioned." The proposal caught Lisa's interest in a way that financial support alone hadn't. Michael could see her mind working through the possibilities, the ways his involvement could strengthen her clinic's mission without undermining her autonomy. "You would really want to do that?" she asked. "Give up one day a week of your private practice to work with uninsured children?" "It's what I should have been doing all along," Michael admitted. "What we talked about doing together. Maybe it's time I remembered why I became a doctor in the first place." Their conversation was interrupted by the return of Emma and Ella. From their art session, both girls carrying colorful drawings they had created during their time with the hospital's art therapist. The sessions had been recommended to help them process the trauma of their mother's illness, and the results were both touching and revealing. Emma's drawing showed a hospital room with 4 figures: herself, Ella, their mother, and a tall man in a white coat who was clearly meant to be Michael. All 4 figures were holding hands in a circle around the hospital bed, and above them, Emma had written in careful block letters, "Our family." Ella's artwork was more abstract, but equally meaningful. She had created a colorful landscape with a house in the center, surrounded by flowers and trees. 3 figures stood in front of the house, 2 small ones and 1 larger one that Michael assumed represented Lisa. But off to the side, as if approaching the house, was a 4th figure walking up a path toward the family group. "These are beautiful," Lisa said, examining both drawings carefully. "Can you tell me about them?" "Mine shows how we're all connected now," Emma explained matter-of-factly. "Dr. Harrison is part of our family because he helped save you and because he takes care of us. Mine shows our house," Ella added, pointing to her drawing. "And that's Dr. Harrison coming to visit us when we go home." Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion as he looked at the innocent hopefulness in both drawings. These children had incorporated him into their vision of family and future with a naturalness that both humbled and terrified him. They were counting on him to remain part of their lives, trusting him with their emotional security in a way that felt both precious and overwhelming. The day of Lisa's discharge arrived with a mixture of celebration and uncertainty. The medical team was pleased with her recovery, and all her tests showed that the infection had been completely eliminated. She was weak and would need several weeks of rest before returning to work, but the crisis had passed. Michael found himself helping to gather the accumulated belongings that had made room 314 home for the past 2 weeks. Flowers from Lisa's colleagues at Metro General, get-well cards from the twins' classmates, books and games that had helped pass the long hours of waiting. All of it needed to be packed and transported to their apartment in Brooklyn. "This feels strange," Lisa admitted as she signed her discharge papers. "This room has been our whole world for so long that leaving it feels like stepping into the unknown." "The unknown doesn't have to be scary," Michael said, loading Emma's backpack with the medical textbooks she had borrowed from the hospital library. "Sometimes it's just different." The drive to Brooklyn gave Michael his first glimpse of the neighborhood where Lisa had chosen to raise her daughters. It was a working-class area with tree-lined streets and well-maintained apartment buildings, the kind of community where neighbors knew each other and children could play safely in the local parks. Lisa's building was a modest 3-story structure with a small garden in front and bicycles chained to the railings. "This is it," Emma announced proudly as they climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. "Apartment 2B. We've lived here since we were 5. The apartment was small but warm, filled with evidence of the life Lisa had built with her daughters. Bookshelves lined the walls, covered with medical journals, children's literature, and photo albums documenting the twins' growth from babies to the remarkable young people they had become. The living room served multiple purposes: homework, area, reading nook, and entertainment center, with everything organized to maximize the limited space. "It's not much," Lisa said, suddenly seeming self-conscious about the modest surroundings. "It's perfect," Michael said honestly. "You can feel the love in every corner." Emma immediately began giving Michael a tour, proudly showing off the bedroom she shared with Ella, with its 2 twin beds separated by a curtain for privacy, and the small desk where they did their homework together. Ella contributed details about their daily routines, the chore chart on the refrigerator, and the reading corner where their mother told them stories before bed. As the afternoon progressed, Michael found himself settling into the rhythm of their home life in a way that felt surprisingly natural. He helped Lisa get comfortable on the couch, assisted the twins with preparing a simple dinner, and found himself answering homework questions while Lisa rested nearby. "Dr. Harrison," Ella said during a break in her math problems, "are you going to stay for dinner?" Michael looked at Lisa, seeking guidance about the boundaries they should establish now that they were in her home rather than the neutral territory of the hospital. "If your mother is feeling up to company," he said carefully. "Please stay," Lisa said softly. "After 2 weeks of hospital food, even takeout pizza sounds like a feast, and it would be nice to have adult conversation that doesn't involve medical terminology." Dinner was a revelation for Michael. He watched the easy interaction between Lisa and her daughters, the way they shared stories about their day, helped each other with problems, and maintained the kind of close communication that spoke to years of being a tight-knit family unit. Emma's protective instincts were evident in the way she monitored her mother's energy level, while Ella's nurturing nature showed in her efforts to make sure everyone had enough food and felt included in the conversation. "Mom," Emma said during dessert, "when are you going back to work?" "Dr. Martinez said I should take at least 2 more weeks to recover my strength," Lisa replied. "Maybe 3 weeks before I go back to full shifts." "What about your clinic?" Ella asked. "Who's taking care of the children there?" Lisa's expression grew concerned. "Dr. Patel from downtown has been covering the emergency cases, but we've had to cancel most of the regular appointments. I hate the thought of those families not having access to care." Michael saw an opportunity to revisit their earlier conversation about the clinic. "What if I could help cover some of those appointments, just until you're ready to return full-time?" "You don't understand the patient population," Lisa said, though Michael could see the temptation in her eyes. "These are families who often don't speak English as their first language, children who are afraid of doctors because of bad experiences, situations that require more than just medical expertise." "Then teach me," Michael said simply. "Introduce me to your staff. Let me observe how you work with these families. Show me what I need to know to be effective in that environment." Emma looked up from her ice cream with interest. "Dr. Harrison, I could help at your clinic, Mom. He's really good at explaining things so kids can understand. And he's not scary like some doctors," Ella added. "He talks to us like we're real people, not just children." Lisa looked at her daughters, then at Michael, clearly weighing the practical benefits against her concerns about maintaining independence. "It would only be temporary," she said finally, "just until I'm back to full strength." "Of course," Michael agreed, though privately he hoped that his involvement with the clinic might become more permanent. The evening ended with Michael helping to get the twins ready for bed, a process that involved baths, teeth brushing, pajama selection, and the bedtime story ritual that Lisa had mentioned. Despite her fatigue, Lisa insisted on reading to the girls, settling into the chair between their beds with a worn copy of Charlotte's Web that had clearly been a favorite for years. Michael found himself included in this intimate family routine with a naturalness that surprised him. Emma asked him to check that her math homework was correctly completed, while Ella showed him her collection of drawings from art therapy, each one revealing another layer of her processing of recent events. "Dr. Harrison," Emma said as he prepared to leave, "will you come back tomorrow?" "If your mother is feeling well enough for visitors," Michael replied, looking to Lisa for confirmation. "I think that would be nice," Lisa said, and Michael caught something in her tone that suggested she was looking forward to his return as much as her daughters were. Driving home through the Brooklyn streets, Michael reflected on how dramatically his life had changed in the space of 2 weeks. He had gone from a solitary existence focused entirely on his surgical practice to being emotionally invested in a ready-made family that had somehow become central to his happiness and sense of purpose. The next morning brought an unexpected Phone call from Maria Rodriguez, the neighbor who had been helping care for the twins during Lisa's hospitalization. "Dr. Harrison, I hope you don't mind me calling," Maria said, her voice carrying a note of concern. "Lisa gave me your number in case of emergencies. She's running a fever this morning, and the girls are worried. I think she might be pushing herself too hard too soon." Michael was at their apartment within 30 minutes, his medical bag in his heart racing with worry that Lisa might be experiencing a relapse. He found her on the couch, clearly fighting exhaustion and what appeared to be a low-grade fever, while Emma and Ella hovered nearby with expressions of barely controlled panic. "It's probably just my body adjusting to being home," Lisa said, weakly, as Michael checked her temperature and pulse. "I'm sure it's nothing serious." "Your temperature is elevated, and your pulse is faster than I'd like," Michael said, his medical training taking precedence over his personal concerns. "Have you been taking your prescribed medications?" "Yes, but I might have skipped a dose yesterday evening," Lisa admitted. "I was tired, and the girls needed help with their homework." Michael felt a flash of frustration at Lisa's tendency to put everyone else's needs before her own health, a trait that had clearly been necessary as a single mother, but was potentially dangerous during her recovery. "You need to prioritize your healing," he said firmly. "The girls need you healthy more than they need help with homework." Emma stepped forward, her mature voice cutting through the tension. "Dr. Harrison is right. Mom, we can do our homework by ourselves if we have to. We can't take care of you if you get sick again." The fear in Emma's voice was evident, and Michael realized that the twins were reliving the trauma of their mother's initial hospitalization. They had just gotten her back, and now they were facing the possibility of losing her again. "I think you should come stay with me for a few days," Michael said, surprising himself with the spontaneous offer. "Just until your fever breaks and you're feeling stronger. My apartment has a guest room, and I can monitor your condition more closely." Lisa started to protest, but Ella's immediate response cut through her objections. "Please, Mom," Ella said, her eyes filling with tears. "We were so scared when you were in the hospital. If Dr. Harrison can help make sure you don't get sick again, we want you to go." Emma nodded in agreement. "Mrs. Rodriguez can take care of us for a few days. We'll be good, and we'll do all our homework without complaining." Looking at her daughter's faces, Lisa seemed to recognize that her resistance to help was causing them additional anxiety rather than providing the independence she valued. "Just for a few days," she said finally, "and only because it will give the girls peace of mind." Michael felt a surge of relief and anticipation as he helped Lisa pack a small bag for her stay at his apartment. Having her in his space, being able to care for her properly, felt like a natural progression of their renewed relationship. It also meant that he would have uninterrupted time to talk with her about their future, about the possibilities that lay ahead for both of them and for Emma and Ella. The drive to Manhattan gave them their first opportunity for extended private conversation since Lisa's discharge from the hospital. Away from the twins' watchful eyes and the constant interruptions of daily life, they could finally address the questions that had been hovering between them. "This is moving very fast," Lisa said, as they navigated the traffic toward Michael's apartment building. 2 weeks ago, we hadn't seen each other in over a decade. Now I'm staying in your home, and you're talking about working at my clinic. Does the pace concern you?" Michael asked, genuinely wanting to understand her feelings. "It concerns me that we might be making decisions based on emotion rather than logic," Lisa said honestly. "The girls have been through a traumatic experience, and they've latched onto you as a source of stability. But what happens when the crisis is over and normal life resumes? Will you still want to be part of our complicated, chaotic world?" Michael considered her question seriously as he pulled into his building's parking garage. The crisis brought us back together, but what I feel for you and for Emma and Ella isn't dependent on drama or emergency. It's based on seeing who you've become, who they're becoming, and recognizing that being part of your lives makes me a better person. And if we try this and it doesn't work? Lisa asked. If we discover that we're too different now, or that the demands of blending our lives are too complicated? The girls have already been through one major loss. I can't risk putting them through another one. Then we take it slowly, Michael said, as they entered the elevator to his penthouse. We build something solid and sustainable instead of rushing into anything. But Lisa, I need you to know that walking away isn't an option for me anymore. Even if our romantic relationship doesn't work out, I want to be part of Emma and Ella's lives. They've become too important to me to just disappear. Lisa was quiet as they entered Michael's apartment, but he could see her taking in the elegant but sterile environment he had created for himself. The space was beautiful but impersonal, lacking the warmth and character that filled every corner of her modest Brooklyn home. "It's very nice," she said diplomatically, though Michael suspected she was thinking the same thing he was, that his apartment felt more like a hotel than a home. "It's comfortable," Michael said, suddenly seeing his living space through her eyes and finding it wanting. "But you're right. It doesn't feel much like a place where children would be welcome." "We could change that," Lisa said softly, and Michael felt his heart leap at the implication of her words. As he showed Lisa to the guest room and helped her get settled, Michael found himself imagining how different his apartment could be, with the addition of family photos, children's artwork on the refrigerator, and the sound of laughter echoing through the spacious rooms. For the first time in years, he could envision his home as something more than just a place to sleep between surgeries. The next few days established a new routine that felt both natural and revolutionary to Michael. He would leave for his morning surgeries while Lisa rested, return during lunch to check on her recovery and share a quiet meal, then spend his evenings helping her review patient files from her clinic and discussing treatment approaches for the families she served. These conversations gave Michael insight into Lisa's work that went far beyond their earlier discussions. He learned about Maria Santos, the 7-year-old with asthma whose family couldn't afford the specialized inhaler she needed, about the Rodriguez twins who had been born prematurely and required ongoing developmental support, about the Chen family whose teenage son was struggling with diabetes management because they couldn't afford consistent access to testing supplies. Each case represented not just a medical challenge, but a human story, a family struggling to provide the best care for their children despite economic obstacles that made proper treatment difficult or impossible. Michael found himself thinking about these patients long after their conversations ended, researching treatment options and considering ways his surgical expertise might contribute to their care. "You're getting invested in this," Lisa observed one evening as she watched him research innovative surgical techniques for treating clubfoot in children without access to traditional orthopedic care. "Is that a problem?" Michael asked, looking up from his laptop. "It's wonderful," Lisa said with a smile that reminded him of why he had fallen in love with her years ago. "It's the side of you I fell in love with in medical school. The doctor who cared more about helping people than about building a prestigious practice. Maybe it took losing you to remind me who I wanted to be," Michael said quietly. Their conversation was interrupted by his phone ringing with a call from Emma. The twins had been calling every evening at 8 o'clock, a routine they had established to check on their mother's recovery and maintain their connection to both of them. "Dr. Harrison, is Mom feeling better today?" Emma's voice carried the concern that seemed to be her constant companion. "She's much better," Michael assured her. "Her fever broke this morning, and she's been resting comfortably all day. Can we talk to her?" Ella's voice joined the conversation, clearly speaking from an extension phone. Michael handed the phone to Lisa, but remained close enough to hear both sides of the conversation. The twins recounted their day at school, the homework assignments they had completed, and the dinner Mrs. Rodriguez had prepared for them. But underneath their cheerful reports, Michael could hear the longing in their voices, the desire to be reunited with their mother. "We miss you, Mom," Ella said during a quiet moment in the conversation. "I miss you too, sweetheart," Lisa replied, her voice thick with emotion. "But Dr. Harrison is taking very good care of me, and I'll be home soon." "Today, will Dr. Harrison come home with you?" Emma asked with characteristic directness. Lisa looked at Michael, clearly unsure how to answer the question. They hadn't discussed the specifics of what would happen when she was ready to return to Brooklyn, though Michael had been hoping he would be invited to continue being part of their daily routine. "We'll have to see," Lisa said diplomatically, "but I'm sure he'll come visit us very soon." After the phone call ended, Lisa and Michael found themselves facing the question that had been implicit in their renewed relationship, but never directly addressed. "What are we doing here, Michael?" Lisa asked softly. "Are we trying to recapture something from our past, or are we building something new?" "I think we're building something new that's based on who we've become, rather than who we were," Michael said. "The people we are now, you as a mother and a doctor who's dedicated her life to serving others, me as someone who's finally remembering what really matters, those people have a chance to create something better than what we had before." "And Emma and Ella?" Lisa asked. "How do they fit into this new thing we're building?" "They're the most important part," Michael said without hesitation. "Whatever happens between us, I want to be part of their lives. I want to help them grow up, support their dreams, be someone they can count on." Lisa studied his face in the dim light of the living room. "That's a big commitment to make to children you've known for less than a month." "Some connections don't require time to develop," Michael said. "From the moment I saw them sitting in that hospital corridor, keeping vigil for their mother, I knew they were special. Getting to know them has only confirmed that instinct." "They adore you," Lisa said softly. "Emma tries to hide it because she's afraid of being hurt again, but she lights up whenever you walk into a room. And Ella has started talking about you like you're already part of the family." "Is that what worries you?" Michael asked. "That they're getting too attached too quickly?" "It worries me that you might not understand what you're signing up for," Lisa said honestly. "Being a parent isn't just about the fun moments and the cute conversations. It's about middle-of-the-night fevers and teenage rebellion and college tuition and worrying about whether you're making the right decisions for their future. It's about putting their needs before your own for the next decade and beyond." Michael considered her words, recognizing the truth in her concerns. He had no experience with the daily realities of parenting, no understanding of the sacrifices and compromises it required. But he also knew that his feelings for Emma and Ella were already deep enough that he couldn't imagine walking away from them. "I know I have a lot to learn," he said finally, "but I want to learn it. I want to be the kind of father figure they deserve, the kind of partner you need. I'm willing to make the commitment, Lisa. The question is whether you're willing to let me try." The conversation marked a turning point in their relationship, moving them from tentative reunion to serious consideration of a shared future. Over the remaining days of Lisa's recovery at his apartment, they talked through the practical implications of combining their lives, the logistics of housing, the integration of their careers, the delicate process of helping Emma and Ella adjust to having a father figure in their lives. By the time Lisa was ready to return home, they had reached an understanding that felt both exciting and terrifying. Michael would begin spending time at the Brooklyn apartment, gradually becoming a more integral part of the twins' daily routine. He would start volunteering at Lisa's clinic, contributing his surgical expertise to the mission they had once dreamed of pursuing together, and they would take the time to rebuild their romantic relationship on the foundation of who they had become rather than who they had been. The morning of Lisa's return to Brooklyn, Michael helped her pack her belongings. With a mixture of anticipation and nervousness, they were about to test whether the connection they had rediscovered could survive the realities of daily life with two 10-year-old girls who had strong opinions about how their world should work. "Are you ready for this?" Lisa asked as they loaded her bag into his car. "I don't think anyone can be ready for something this important," Michael said honestly. "But I've never wanted anything more in my life." As they drove through the familiar Brooklyn streets toward the apartment that might soon become his second home, Michael reflected on how completely his priorities had shifted in the space of a few weeks. The prestigious surgical practice that had once defined his worth now seemed less important than being present for Emma's next math test or Ella's upcoming art show. The luxury apartment that had once been his sanctuary now felt empty compared to the warm chaos of family life. When they pulled up in front of Lisa's building, Emma and Ella were already waiting on the front steps, having spotted the car from their bedroom window. They launched themselves at their mother with the enthusiasm of children who had been counting the minutes until her return. But Michael noticed that they also included him in their joyful reunion. "Dr. Harrison, are you coming upstairs?" Ella asked, taking his hand as they climbed the stairs to the second floor. "If that's all right with everyone," Michael said, looking to Lisa for confirmation. "I think that would be very nice," Lisa said, and Michael caught the note of promise in her voice. As they entered the apartment that had become familiar to him over the past weeks, Michael felt a sense of coming home that had nothing to do with the physical space and everything to do with the people who filled it. Emma immediately began recounting everything that had happened during their mother's absence, while Ella showed Lisa the drawing she had created as a welcome home present. "This is us," Ella explained, pointing to the 4 figures in her latest artwork. "Our family." Michael looked at the drawing, seeing himself included once again in Ella's vision of their family unit, and felt a surge of emotion that surprised him with its intensity. These children had accepted him into their lives with a generosity that humbled him, trusting him with their hearts in a way that made him want to be worthy of their faith. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Lisa said, hugging Ella close. "I think we should hang it on the refrigerator with all your other artwork." As they settled into the evening routine of homework, dinner preparation, and bedtime stories, Michael found himself thinking about the future they were building together. It wouldn't be simple or easy. Blending lives never was. But looking at Lisa helping Emma with her math homework while Ella showed him her latest drawings, he knew they had something worth fighting for. The real test would come in the days and weeks ahead as they navigated the challenges of creating a new family dynamic while honoring the strong bond Lisa had already established with her daughters. But for the first time in years, Michael felt like he was exactly where he belonged. 3 months had passed since Lisa's recovery, and the rhythm of their blended life had settled into something that felt both natural and extraordinary. Michael's presence in the twins' daily routine had evolved from novelty to necessity, though none of them had explicitly acknowledged the depth of the transformation taking place. He found himself keeping a spare change of clothes at the Brooklyn apartment, staying for dinner most evenings, and waking up early on Saturday mornings to make pancakes while Lisa slept in after her demanding hospital shifts. Emma had gradually allowed her protective walls to lower, though she maintained her role as the family's practical guardian. She had begun asking Michael for help with her science projects, recognizing his expertise while still asserting her independence. Ella, meanwhile, had embraced his presence with wholehearted enthusiasm, saving her best artwork to show him first, and insisting he attend every school performance or presentation. The morning that would change everything began like any other weekday. Michael arrived at the apartment at 7:30 to help with the breakfast routine, finding Lisa already dressed for work and the twins in various stages of getting ready for school. Emma was methodically packing her backpack according to the checklist she kept taped to her bedroom wall, while Ella searched frantically for her missing art supplies. "Dr. Harrison, can you help me find my colored pencils?" Ella called from the living room, her voice carrying the slight panic that always accompanied the possibility of being unprepared for school. "They're in the kitchen drawer where you left them after yesterday's homework," Michael replied, already moving to retrieve them. The ease with which he navigated their morning chaos spoke to how completely he had been integrated into their family system. As they sat around the small dining table sharing breakfast, Emma suddenly looked up from her cereal with an expression of serious consideration. "Mom, I need to ask you something important," she said, her tone carrying the weight that always preceded her most significant questions. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Emma glanced at Michael, then back at her mother, clearly working up the courage for whatever she wanted to discuss. "At school yesterday, Mrs. Patterson was talking about family trees for our genealogy project. She said we need to include information about both our parents." Lisa's spoon paused halfway to her mouth, and Michael felt a familiar tension settle in his chest. This was the conversation they had all been carefully avoiding, the question that hovered unspoken in every interaction they shared. "What did you tell Mrs. Patterson?" Lisa asked carefully. "I told her that we only have information about your side of the family," Emma replied matter-of-factly. "But then she said that everyone has two parents, even if one of them isn't around anymore. She said maybe we could research our father's family history too." Ella had stopped eating entirely, her attention focused completely on the conversation unfolding between her sister and mother. Michael found himself holding his breath, recognizing that this moment had the potential to reshape their entire relationship. "What would you like to know?" Lisa asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Everything," Emma said without hesitation. "What he was like, why he isn't part of our lives, whether he even knows we exist. I'm tired of having this big blank space where half our family should be." Ella nodded in agreement, though her approach was characteristically gentler. "It's not that we're not happy with just you, Mom, but sometimes we wonder about him. Like, whether we look like him, or whether he's good at math like Emma, or whether he likes art like me." Michael felt his heart racing as he listened to the twins express the curiosity that had been building for months. These weren't casual questions born of a school assignment. They were deep, fundamental needs to understand their own identity and place in the world. Lisa looked across the table at Michael, her eyes reflecting the same mixture of fear and inevitability that he was feeling. They had known this moment would come, had discussed how to handle it, but actually facing the conversation was more overwhelming than either of them had anticipated. "Your father," Lisa began slowly, "was someone very special. He was brilliant and dedicated and had a good heart. We met in medical school and fell in love." "What happened?" Emma asked, her analytical mind immediately zeroing in on the crucial question. Why didn't he stay? "He got an opportunity to advance his career that required him to move far away," Lisa explained, sticking to the version of events they had agreed upon. "We were both young and thought our careers were more important than staying together." "But what about when you found out you were pregnant with us?" Ella asked. "Didn't you tell him?" The directness of the question caught Lisa off guard, and Michael could see her struggling with how much truth to reveal. They had discussed this scenario extensively, but facing the actual moment of decision was proving more difficult than either of them had expected. "I made a choice," Lisa said finally. I thought he was happy with his new life, and I didn't want to complicate things for him." Emma's expression grew thoughtful as she processed this information. "So, he doesn't know about us?" "Not originally," Lisa said, glancing again at Michael, "but circumstances change. People's lives take unexpected turns." Michael recognized that Lisa was trying to prepare the twins for a revelation without actually making it, but he could see the confusion building in both girls' faces. Emma's practical nature was demanding clearer answers, while Ella's emotional intelligence was picking up on the undercurrents of tension in the conversation. "Mom," Emma said, with the determined tone she used when she wasn't going to be deterred, "you're not telling us something. There's more to this story." Michael made a decision that would alter the trajectory of all their lives. "Emma's right," he said quietly. "There is more to the story." 3 pairs of eyes turned to him, and Michael felt the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. Everything that happened next would determine not just his relationship with the twins, but their understanding of their own identity and their trust in the adults who had been guiding their lives. "Your father," Michael continued, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart, "didn't know about you because your mother made a difficult choice to protect everyone involved. She thought she was doing the right thing." "How do you know so much about it?" Ella asked, her intuitive nature sensing something significant in Michael's words. Michael looked at Lisa, seeking her permission to continue. She nodded slowly, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and relief that the secret they had been carrying was finally about to be shared. "I know about it," Michael said gently, "because I'm your father." The silence that followed was profound and electric. Emma's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, anger, and something that might have been relief. Ella's eyes widened as she processed the implications of Michael's words, her artistic mind clearly working through all the times he had seemed familiar, all the moments when she had felt an inexplicable connection to him. "You're our dad?" Ella whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes," Michael confirmed, his throat tight with emotion. "I didn't know about you until that night I met you at the hospital. Your mother had never told me she was pregnant." Emma's reaction was immediate and intense. "You've known for 3 months?" she demanded, her voice rising with indignation. "You've been pretending to be our friend when you're actually our father." "Emma," Lisa interjected, "it's more complicated than that." "No, it's not!" Emma stood up from the table, her face flushed with anger and hurt. "It's exactly that simple. He's our dad, and you both lied to us for months." Michael felt his heart breaking as he watched Emma struggle with the revelation. Her need for honesty and straightforward communication had been violated in the most fundamental way possible, and he could see the walls she had carefully lowered beginning to rebuild themselves. "We didn't lie," he said carefully. "We just needed time to figure out how to tell you in a way that wouldn't be overwhelming." "By lying," Emma repeated, her voice cracking with emotion. "By pretending to be someone you weren't." Ella's response was different, but equally painful to witness. Instead of anger, she seemed to retreat into herself, her normally expressive face becoming carefully blank as she processed the information. "Ella, sweetheart, what are you thinking?" Lisa asked gently. "I'm thinking about my drawings." Ella said quietly, "All those pictures I made with 4 people in them. My brain knew before I did." Michael felt a surge of hope at Ella's words, recognizing that her artistic intuition had indeed been picking up on the family connection that existed between them. "You drew us as a family because that's what we are," he said softly. "What we've been becoming, even without the words to describe it. But we're not a real family," Emma said, her protective instincts now turned against the very people she had been learning to trust. "Real families don't lie to each other. Real families don't keep secrets about who people actually are." The accusation hit Michael like a physical blow, not because it was cruel, but because it contained a kernel of truth that he couldn't deny. They had kept a fundamental secret from the twins, justifying it as protection, but ultimately denying them the right to know their own father's identity. "You're right," he said, meeting Emma's angry gaze directly. "We should have told you sooner. We should have found a way to be honest with you from the beginning." "Why didn't you?" Ella asked, her voice small and hurt. "Didn't you trust us enough to tell us the truth?" "It wasn't about trust," Lisa said, reaching across the table to take Ella's hand. "We were afraid that it would be too much change too quickly, afraid that you might feel pressured to accept a relationship you weren't ready for. So instead you decided for us," Emma said, her tone carrying a bitterness that was painful to hear from. "Someone so young, just like you decided not to tell him about us in the first place." The parallel Emma drew between Lisa's original decision and their recent deception was uncomfortably accurate. Michael could see Lisa struggling with the realization that her pattern of making unilateral decisions to protect others had repeated itself with potentially damaging consequences. "What happens now?" Ella asked, looking between her mother and Michael with eyes that seemed too old for her 10-year-old face. It was the question that none of them had a clear answer for. The careful equilibrium they had established over the past 3 months had been shattered by the truth, and now they needed to find a way forward that honored both the deception and the love that had grown between them. "Now we start over," Michael said, making another spontaneous decision. "We start with the truth and see if we can build something real from here." "What if we don't want to start over?" Emma asked, her voice challenging. "What if we're tired of adults making decisions about our lives without asking us what we want?" The question forced Michael to confront the possibility that his revelation might have cost him the relationship with his daughters rather than strengthening it. Emma's anger was justified, and there was no guarantee that time would heal the breach of trust that had opened between them. "Then you tell us what you want," he said quietly. "You decide what kind of relationship, if any, you want to have with me now that you know who I really am." Emma studied his face intently, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. "You'd really let us decide?" "Yes," Michael said without hesitation. "This is your choice to make." The twins exchanged one of their silent communications, a complex conversation taking place through glances and subtle expressions that excluded the adults from their decision-making process. Michael found himself holding his breath as he waited for their verdict. It was Ella who spoke first. "I want to keep calling you Dr. Harrison for now," she said carefully, "until I figure out how I feel about everything." Michael nodded, recognizing that she needed time to process the revelation and decide how to integrate this new understanding into her relationship with him. "That's perfectly reasonable," he said. "Take all the time you need." Emma's response was more complex. "I'm really angry right now," she said, her honesty cutting straight to the heart of the matter. "But I'm also confused because I don't want you to go away. I just don't know how to trust you anymore." The admission revealed the depth of Emma's internal conflict. Her anger at the deception was competing with her attachment to Michael, creating an emotional complexity that would take time to resolve. "I understand," Michael said, fighting the urge to make promises or reassurances that might sound hollow in the face of her justified anger. "Trust has to be earned, and I know I have work to do to earn yours." Lisa had been quietly observing the exchange between Michael and the twins, and now she stepped forward to address her own role in the situation. "I need you both to know that this isn't Dr. Harrison's fault," she said firmly. "The decision not to tell him about you originally was mine. The decision to wait before revealing who he was, that was also mine. If you need to be angry at someone, be angry at me. We can be angry at "Both of you," Emma said, with characteristic bluntness, "you both made choices that affected us without including us." The conversation was interrupted by the realization that the twins were going to be late for school if they didn't leave soon. The mundane necessity of maintaining their daily routine created a strange juxtaposition with the monumental shift that had just occurred in their family dynamic. "Should we stay home today?" Lisa asked. "This is a lot to process." "No," Emma said decisively. "I want to go to school. I need time to think, and I think better when I'm doing normal things." Ella nodded in agreement. "Plus, we have the art show planning meeting today, and I don't want to miss it." Michael marveled at the resilience both girls displayed, their ability to compartmentalize their emotional processing while continuing to fulfill their responsibilities. It spoke to the strength Lisa had fostered in them and their own remarkable capacity for handling difficult situations. As they gathered their school supplies and prepared to leave, the usual morning routine felt charged with new significance. Michael wasn't sure whether he should maintain his normal level of involvement or step back to give the twins space to process. "Dr. Harrison," Ella said as they reached the front door, "will you still be here when we get home from school?" The question carried enormous weight, representing both hope and fear about the continuity of their relationship despite the revelations of the morning. "If you want me to be," Michael replied carefully. "We do," Ella said, speaking for both herself and Emma. "Even if we're confused and angry, we still want you here." Emma nodded reluctantly, her practical nature recognizing that pushing Michael away wouldn't solve anything. "But we need to talk more about everything, about what this means and how it's going to work." "Absolutely," Michael agreed. "We'll talk about whatever you want to discuss." Known after the twins left for school, Michael and Lisa found themselves alone in the apartment, surrounded by the debris of their shattered secret and uncertain about how to move forward. "That went better than I expected," Lisa said, though her voice carried the strain of the morning's emotional intensity. "Did it?" Michael asked. "Emma is furious, Ella is confused, and we've damaged their trust in us." "But they want you to stay," Lisa pointed out. "They want to work through this, rather than just cutting ties. That's more than we had any right to hope for." Michael recognized the truth in her words, but he also understood that their real test would come in the days and weeks ahead as they tried to rebuild their relationships on a foundation of honesty rather than careful omissions. The day passed, slowly for Michael, who found himself unable to concentrate on his surgical cases as he replayed the morning's conversation and worried about how the twins were processing the revelations. He called Lisa twice to check in, but her day at the emergency room was equally demanding, leaving them both to wrestle with their concerns individually. When 3:30 arrived, Michael was already waiting outside the twins' school, unsure whether they would want to see him, but determined to be available if they needed him. Emma spotted him first, her expression unreadable as she approached with Ella beside her. "You came," Ella observed, though her tone gave no indication of whether she was pleased or disappointed by his presence. "I said I would be here," Michael replied simply. Emma studied his face with her usual intensity. "Do you always keep your promises?" The question was clearly a test, and Michael understood that his answer would be scrutinized for any hint of deception or qualification. "I tried to," he said honestly. "I'm not perfect, but I try to do what I say I'm going to do." "Good," Emma said with a sharp nod. "Because we have questions, and we want real answers this time." The walk home became an impromptu interrogation session, with Emma leading the questioning while Ella contributed her own observations and concerns. They wanted to know about Michael's life before he met their mother, about his reasons for leaving New York originally, about what he had been. doing for the past decade while they were growing up without him. Michael answered as honestly as he could, acknowledging his mistakes and regrets while trying to help them understand the context of decisions that had seemed reasonable at the time, but looked selfish in retrospect. He told them about the loneliness of his successful but empty life, about the ways that meeting them had changed his priorities, about his growing desire to be the father they deserved. "What about your fancy apartment?" Emma asked as they climbed the stairs to their building. "Are you going to want us to live there instead of here?" The question revealed one of Emma's deeper fears, that accepting Michael as their father would mean losing the stability and familiarity of the life Lisa had built for them. "This is your home," Michael said firmly. "If I'm going to be part of your family, it's because you want me in your life as it is, not because I want to change everything about how you live." "But your apartment is so much bigger," Ella pointed out, "and fancier. Wouldn't you rather we live there?" Michael stopped on the landing outside their apartment door, recognizing that this conversation required his full attention. "Money doesn't make a home," he said seriously. "Love makes a home. Your mother has given you something in this apartment that all my money couldn't buy: security, warmth, and the knowledge that you're treasured exactly as you are." Emma's expression softened slightly at his words, though she maintained her protective stance. "So you're not going to try to change everything? I'm going to try to fit into what you've already built," Michael promised. "And if there are changes to be made, there'll be decisions we make together as a family." The afternoon and evening that followed were unlike anything Michael had experienced in his adult life. He found himself subjected to the most thorough interrogation of his life as Emma and Ella worked through their questions about his identity, his intentions, and his understanding of what being their father would actually mean. They asked about his own childhood, his relationship with his parents, his understanding of how families were supposed to work. They wanted to know whether he would expect them to call him Dad immediately, whether he planned to marry their mother, whether he would still help with homework and attend school events now that his real identity had been revealed. Each question demonstrated the sophistication of their thinking and the depth of their need to understand how this revelation would affect their daily lives. Michael found himself admiring their pragmatic approach, even as he recognized the vulnerability underlying their careful questioning. As bedtime approached, the usual routine took on new significance. The twins had always hugged Michael goodnight, a casual gesture that had evolved naturally over the months of his involvement in their lives. Tonight, both girls hesitated, clearly uncertain about whether the physical affection they had shared was still appropriate now that they knew he was their father. "Can I still have a hug?" Ella asked tentatively. "Always," Michael replied, opening his arms to welcome her. "Nothing about how much I care about you has changed." Emma watched her sister embrace Michael, her internal struggle visible on her face. Finally, she stepped forward and allowed herself to be hugged as well, though Michael could feel the tension in her small body. "This is really weird," she mumbled against his shoulder. "I know," Michael said softly. "It's going to take time for all of us to figure out how this works." After the twins were settled in their beds, Michael and Lisa found themselves sitting in the living room, both emotionally exhausted from the day's revelations and conversations. "How do you think they're really doing?" Michael asked, worried about the long-term impact of their deception on the twins' ability to trust them. "Better than I dared to hope," Lisa said honestly. "They're hurt and confused, but they're not pushing you away. They want to figure out how to make this work, which means they've already accepted you as their father, even if they're not ready to say it yet." "Emma's anger is justified," Michael said. "We should have found a way to tell them sooner." "Probably," Lisa agreed, "but we can't change that now. All we can do is prove that we're trustworthy going forward." The next few weeks brought a gradual evolution in their family dynamic as the twins processed their new understanding of Michael's role in their lives. Emma's anger slowly gave way to cautious acceptance, though she maintained her need for honesty and direct communication about their changing relationship. Ella adapted more quickly, her artistic nature allowing her to embrace the emotional complexity of loving someone who had initially appeared in their lives under different circumstances. The real breakthrough came during a Saturday morning breakfast, when Emma, who had been unusually quiet for several days, suddenly looked up from her pancakes and addressed Michael directly. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her tone more open than it had been since the revelation. "Of course," Michael replied, setting down his coffee cup to give her his full attention. "When you first saw us at the hospital, before you knew who we were, what did you think?" Michael considered the question carefully, recognizing that Emma was testing whether his feelings for them were genuine or simply the result of discovering their biological connection. "I thought you were the bravest children I had ever seen," he said honestly. "You were scared and tired, but you were taking care of each other and keeping vigil for your mother with a strength that amazed me. I wanted to help you, but more than that, I wanted to know you." "Really?" Ella asked, looking up from the drawing she had been working on while eating. "Really?" Michael confirmed. "Before I knew you were my daughters, I already cared about you as individuals. Finding out you were mine just gave me a name for feelings that were already there." Emma nodded slowly, processing his answer with her usual thoroughness. "Okay," she said finally. "I think I'm ready to try calling you Dad, if that's what you want." The simple statement hit Michael with unexpected force, bringing tears to his eyes as he realized that Emma was offering him the greatest gift she could give: her trust and acceptance. "I would be honored," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Me too," Ella added, abandoning her drawing to climb into Michael's lap. "I've been wanting to call you Dad for weeks, but I didn't know if it was okay." As Michael held his daughters, and they were truly his daughters now, not just biologically but emotionally and legally, he felt a completeness that he had never experienced before. The successful surgical practice, the prestigious awards, the financial security he had spent years building all paled in comparison to this moment of being accepted and loved by these two remarkable children. Lisa watched the scene with tears streaming down her face, seeing the family she had always dreamed of finally coming together in a way that honored both their past and their future. That evening, as they settled into their bedtime routine, with Michael reading the story and tucking both girls into their beds, Emma made one final observation that captured the significance of their journey. "Dad," she said, testing the word with obvious pleasure, "I'm glad Mom got sick." Michael looked at her in surprise, wondering how she could find gratitude in such a frightening experience. "Not because she was hurt," Emma clarified quickly, "but because if she hadn't gotten sick, we might never have met you, and then we wouldn't have had the chance to become a real family." Michael kissed her forehead gently, marveling at the wisdom and resilience of this 10-year-old who had taught him more about love and family in a few months than he had learned in his entire adult life. "I'm glad too," he said softly. "Getting to be your dad is the best thing that's ever happened to me." As he turned off the lights and joined Lisa in the living room, Michael reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them together. From that first night in the hospital corridor to this moment of complete family unity, they had traveled a path that none of them could have predicted, but all of them were grateful to have found. 6 months later, Michael's name appeared on the girls' school emergency contact forms as their father. His apartment had been sold, with the proceeds used to expand Lisa's clinic and purchase a house in Brooklyn large enough for their growing a family. The guest room in his old penthouse had been replaced by 2 bedrooms, decorated according to Emma's practical preferences and Ella's artistic vision. The transformation was complete, but it had happened gradually, naturally, in a way that honored the strong foundation Lisa had built while incorporating Michael's presence into their established rhythms. They had become exactly what Ella had drawn in her pictures from the very beginning, a family, complete and whole, bound together by love that had survived secrets, misunderstandings, and the complex process of learning to trust each other with their hearts. On Emma and Ella's 11th birthday, as they blew out the candles on a cake that Michael had helped them bake, he made a silent promise to the daughters who had changed his life so completely. He would spend the rest of his days proving worthy of the trust they had placed in him, supporting their dreams and ensuring that they always knew how deeply they were loved by both their parents. The twins had taught him that family wasn't just about biology or legal documents. It was about showing up, being present, and choosing to love someone consistently through all the challenges and changes that life would bring. It was a lesson he would carry with him forever, grateful beyond measure for the night he had spotted 2 small figures keeping vigil in a hospital corridor and decided to see if he could help. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.